Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, and I'm speaking to you here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And today I am doing a video continuing my top 100 favorite albums. And right now, today I'm gonna do two, number 96 and number 95 on my list. And before that, I want to say thank you for listening to my or watching my video, and I enjoy hearing your comments on what you think about these albums and what your opinions are on the groups that I'm going to talk about here. And just love having that discussion. And just I really appreciate everything, uh, all the subscribers and all that. So anyway, so getting to that, start with my what's number 96 on my list. It is the Chirping Crickets by Buddy Holly and the Crickets. And this album came out in 1957. Um, this is the only album I've got that's in the 1950s. Everything else is from 1960 on. So this is, I would say, my favorite album from this era, the 1950s. Not to say that there aren't other good groups or good performers. They just didn't really spend a lot of time making, I think, great albums of that time, putting together a lot of their great songs. It was more about putting out great singles, I think, in this period, and not really concentrating on the album. Because I do like like Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry and some of those performers at this time, the early what I call early rock and roll, kind of the original rock and rollers here. And Buddy Holly's definitely up there as one of the great kind of original rock and rollers. One of the most influential bands of all time. Was really influential to the Beatles. If you follow the Beatles at all, you'll hear that they listen to a lot of Buddy Holly, and they especially love the fact that Buddy Holly did a lot of his own writing on his songs, and that really influenced the Beatles, at least John Lennon and Paul McCartney, to be songwriters and write their own material. Anyway, so definitely a big group. Been a big fan of Buddy Holly since I was a kid. Used to listen to his music since I was young. Of course, there's a famous movie, The Buddy Holly Story, with Gary Busey playing Buddy Holly. It's a good movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but my memory is that it was a pretty good movie, and I enjoyed learning about his life. And anyway, so uh, this album, first studio album, has 12 tracks. What's interesting is none of the songs are 2 minutes long. They're all under 2 minutes. So, which I was kind of surprised. I thought under 3 minutes was pretty short. Under 2 minutes, that's incredibly kind of short songs. It seems like that was probably pretty common. I'm sure at this period of time, the shorter the song, the better airplay it's going to get, and so it goes by pretty fast. 12 tracks, 30 minutes maybe in total. I mean, it's pretty fast paced, which I kind of like. I like getting through the songs, an album pretty fast. And just to highlight some of the bigger songs on here, we got Oh Boy, Not Fade Away, Maybe Baby, and then their big one, That'll Be the Day. I would say are kind of their bigger, well-known songs off the album. All classic Buddy Holly. If you know Buddy Holly, these are all, I think, some of his best stuff, some of his classics. What's interesting about this album, that I found that it's the only album that was released during Buddy Holly's lifetime. As you know, Buddy Holly died in 1959. I don't know, he was like 27 maybe, I think. He might have been part of the 27 Club. So he was really young, and I think maybe he made like 3 albums or something like that before he died. But this was the only one, evidently, that came out before he died in that tragic plane crash. Anyway, so I thought that was pretty interesting that he never got to see what influence he had on music and culture, and how much we talk about him even today, way 60, 70 years afterwards, which is too bad. You didn't get to see how much he did or accomplished. Because he died so young. Yeah, he did see obviously some good success. He was on Ed Sullivan Show, I think once or twice. He had a hit album here, a lot of hit songs before he died. So he got to know that, but he never really fully knew what he accomplished, which is too bad. So that was interesting. The other interesting thing I found on here is this producer's name is Norman Petty, and which I didn't know much about Norman Petty or really hear about him much. He was the manager of Buddy Holly. He kind of founded or discovered Buddy Holly and the Crickets. They were in Lubbock, Texas, and he discovered them, and he had a studio, and I think, or he got him into a studio and kind of got him out there. So they helped him become famous. Not only did he manage them, he produced this album, produced I think all their albums that they made. And then on top of that, he also wrote or co-wrote a lot of the songs on here. He co-wrote about 8 songs on this 12-song album. So I mean that's a lot. Co-writing all these songs and some of their big hits on here with Buddy Holly. Buddy Holly also very heavily. None of the songs are just written by just Buddy Holly or just by Norman Petty. They're really collaborative among all these songs, which I thought was interesting because I just assumed Buddy Holly was like the main writer and wrote everything, but it looks like he definitely co-wrote with either Norman Petty or some of the other band members. And there's some songs that weren't written by them, like Roy Orbison wrote 2 of the tracks I saw on here. Roy Orbison co-wrote on, so which he was. I don't know if he wasn't famous at this time, but obviously very famous musician, singer, songwriter himself, and so yeah, Petty. I mean, managing, producing, and co-writing. I mean, he did it all. So I mean, he has a huge part of the success, which I didn't realize, which was interesting. So the members, there's 4 members on this Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Obviously, Buddy Holly's the lead of the band, really the main draw. He's the lead vocalist and lead guitar player. I think about the lead guitar player. He's not he has kind of guitar solos, but they're not like guitar picking solos like a Jimi Hendrix or Jimmy Page or whatnot. He's more of a strummer. Even though he was the lead guitar player, his guitar solos are like strumming solos, so they're not quite as impressive maybe sounding, but they still sound good. I still enjoy it. Still very fast paced, which I enjoy. But yeah, so he's of course obviously like I said, lead vocalist, lead guitar player, big part of the songwriting for Buddy Holly. But Jerry Allison's on drums, Joe Maudlin on bass, and then Nikki Sullivan on rhythm guitar. So that's the whole basic 4 band that you get out of like the Beatles or something. So this album is very popular, did very, very successful. On the Rolling Stones 500 Greatest Albums in 2012 version, it was ranked number 420. I mean, not real high, but still, it's considered one of the great albums. It was what I found on the charts. It went number 5 in the UK. I didn't see anything in the US, which I don't know why, because they're a US band, but I didn't find anything in the US charts. But number 5 UK charts, so it did very well, top 5 in the charts. There are 3 singles that came out of this album. First is "That'll Be the Day," probably the one you probably heard the most. It went number 1. It was Buddy Holly's first number 1 song that he wrote. If you know anything about the history of it, he wrote it from a famous John Wayne movie, The Searchers, in which John Wayne says to a character, "That'll be the day." And so he liked that line so much that he wrote a whole song about it. Though it's nothing about the movie, it's just he loved that idea of "That'll be the day" as a line to say to somebody. Anyways, that's a hugely popular song. Like I said, number 1. "Oh Boy" went number 10. Very good track. And then "Maybe Baby" went number 17. So, I mean, 3 songs, all top 20 hits. I mean, so very, very good success there. And so I want to talk about my whole analysis of the album itself. Like I said, it's good old-fashioned 50s rock and roll music. You know, when rock and roll music was still pretty young, and before the Beatles came around and really changed everything. And it's like I said, it's very fast paced, very just really makes you want to move. You know, it's really fun to listen to. As I was listening to this album, I mostly was thinking about Back to the Future when Marty McFly is in 1955 and he's playing guitar at the 50s dance, you know, and I also think of Grease when they have the dance, the school dance, you know, in Grease. I think of those 2 movies as maybe in my mind as I'm listening to this album, I can see people dancing, you know, I see the girls in those 50s style dresses or poodle skirts and with the hair and the ponytails, and I see the guys in the leisure suits, you know, and I see them, you know, doing that kind of dancing that they do in those movies. You know, so it's just makes me think of a lot of fun, you know, having a fun time. This album just really makes me want to go out and to a 50s style place and do a dance. It was that kind of an album, which I enjoyed quite a bit. I enjoy this old rock and roll music, very enjoyable. Um, and so yeah, that's why I like this album from Buddy Holly and Crickets. And like I said, I've been a fan since I was a kid. Always enjoyed his style. Another thing I say about this is that about Buddy Holly is my dad and I went and took a trip to northern Iowa maybe 3 years ago, 2 years ago, and in northern part of Iowa, there's where Buddy Holly passed where the plane crash was in Clear Lake, Iowa, and we went and visit there, and it was a great. It was one of the highlights of that trip was to go see where Buddy Holly's plane crashed. You can go out. There's a kind of a path you can walk across, and it takes took like 15 minutes to walk to get to this memorial because they crashed in like an empty corner wheat field, and so it kind of shows kind of the area where the plane didn't take very long. It crashed pretty soon after it left it off, so it didn't get very far. And then there's the Surf Ballroom where he played his last concert with the Big Bopper and the other guy, I forget his name. They they had this tour in the Midwest that they were doing, and the Surf Ballroom. You can go into Surf Ballrooms like a museum, and it's a really cool experience. I really highly recommend going to Clear Lake, Iowa, and go see the Surf Ballroom Museum. You get to go. It's still kind of the ballroom is kind of still looks like a 50s style ballroom with a stage, and there's like when I was there, I think there's tables and chairs. Like I can see people eating dinner and watching a show. And I even went and walked onto the stage just so I can look out to the crowd and go, oh, right. I'm standing right where Buddy Holly stood before, right before he passed away, So that was a really cool experience. And there's a lot of, I think they still do some concerts there. And there's a lot of rock and roll memorabilia there, a lot of people, a lot of famous musicians with signed photos and signed guitars and stuff. Anyway, so it's a really great place. Anyway, so I just want to say that. Definitely, if you can, go there. All right, so I'm in this album by giving my top 3 favorite songs on here. Number 3, I'm gonna go with "Maybe Baby," a really great, catchy tune. Number 2, I'm gonna go "Not Fade Away." Not one of their singles. I'm surprised. I really enjoy this. Great guitar work in here. Yeah, it's a really great song. And then number 1 has to be "That'll Be the Day." That's one of their top, I think, with maybe Peggy Sue's, one of the top 2 tracks of all time for Buddy Holly. Very fun song to listen to. Anyway, so that's my review on the Chirping Crickets. That's number 96 on my list. And then now I'm going to touch on the next album, which is ranked number 95 on my list of top 100 albums. And it is an album called "Renaissance" by the group The Association. And this album came out in 1966. It's the second studio album by the Association. Association, pretty big group in the mid '60s, had a lot of big hits. Probably heard a lot of them like "Along Comes Mary," "Cherish," "Wendy." Everybody knows it's Wendy. How that song is. "Never My Love" is one of their biggest ones. Great love song. Anyways, this is their second one. There are 12 songs on this album as well, and they go by fairly fast. Not as fast as the Chirping Crickets, but still fairly fast. Not very long. None of the songs are very long. And looking at the 12 songs, I've never heard of any of these songs actually. None of the songs on here are any of their big hits on this album, which you wonder like why do I have it up so high? There are some really good songs on there. I don't know why they weren't hits. There's still some pretty good ones. And overall, there's no real bad songs on here. It's all pretty solid, I thought. I enjoyed listening to the whole album. And I always like albums that don't have any bad songs. You don't have to have the best songs, but just don't have any bad songs. So I think this is a real solid album throughout. If you know the Association, they kind of came in through the kind of folk rock era. Of course, you had the British invasion with the Beatles and all the other big British England bands coming in. Very popular, most popular at that time, thanks to the Beatles. But he also had this big folk rock, with the Byrds and Lovin' Spoonful, Turtles, and a lot of groups like that were real popular. And the association kind of comes into that folk rock area, though I would say this album is part folk rock, kind of almost want to say folk pop. I don't know if that's a term, but to me it's kind of not real rock and roll as much as it's more pop sounding, I guess. So it's more like a folk pop sound that I think is really good. I enjoy their harmonies are some of the best harmonies you'll ever hear. I think in an album, and I love groups and albums with a lot of harmonies in them. As if you listen to any of my other reviews, a lot of them are. I always talk about harmonies and how much I love great 2-part, 3-part harmonies, or even two duo groups that have great harmonies. Like I already talked about Crosby and Nash is one I really enjoy. Um, and yeah, they're up there with the Byrds, the Beach Boys, the Beatles. I think it's one of the best harmony groups, rock groups at this time. I really enjoy. Um, I'll talk a little bit about the members on here. It's interesting. They have 6 members in the band. Jules Alexander is the lead guitar player. Ted Bluckel Jr. is the drums. Brian Cole is the bass and backing vocals. Russ Gigier is guitar. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but Terry Kirkman's recorder, piano, and tambourine. So he did a lot of other kind of instruments in there. And then Jim Yester is guitar and piano. So they have a lot of different sounds in this album. Like I said, a lot of different instrumentations. Because the 6 members all kind of play different instruments throughout the album, which is interesting. I think it makes a very unique sound to them that I really enjoy. And the 3 really members to really concentrate, I find, is Jules Alexander, Terry Kirkman, and Jim Yester. Seem to be like the 3 core members of the group, and pretty much all the songs are written by one of those 3 members. I think one other member, like I said, the guitar player, also Russ Gigar also writes one of them, but all the other ones are all written by those 3 guys, and I think they basically are the lead vocalists on those songs that they write. So they basically are the 3 main vocalists and songwriters of the group, which is interesting because you don't usually get that many songwriters and lead singers in a group. Usually only get 1, maybe 2 at most. So that really makes them kind of a good diverse group, or makes them unique in that they're able to have so many different people contribute like that. Anyways, I think it was really good. Jules Alexander especially was really big on this album. I think he co-wrote 7 of these 12 tracks. I mean, so more than half the tracks on here are written or co-written by Jules Alexander. So he had a big part in on this album for sure. Though I think my favorite songs were by Jim Yester. I think is probably my favorite member from what I'm hearing on this album. He only wrote a couple really, but they're my favorite on here. On the charts, they came at number 34 on the U.S. charts, this album, Renaissance. So not extremely high, but top 50, top 40 charting. Like I said, not the most I think their first album is probably more successful and had bigger hits on it, but I actually enjoy this album more. They had 2 singles come off this album. The first one, interesting title, it's called Pandora's Golden Heebie-Jeebies. Almost sound like Johnny Carson there. The Heebie-Jeebies. Number 35 on the singles chart. It's kind of a strange name for a song. It's an okay song. It's actually not one of my favorites on the album, so I'm kind of surprised it was released as a single here. But I do love saying the name, Pandora's Golden Heebie-Jeebies. It's a mouthful. And then the second single is actually a really great song. It's called No Fair at All, and it only hit number 51. So not even top 50 song, which I'm surprised because it's such a great song. It's a song I never heard before until I was listening to this last year, trying to come up with this top 100 album list, and I was blown away by how good the song is and how great the harmonies. It's one of the best top 5, I would say, harmony songs I've ever heard in my life. Just a beautiful song. I don't know why it didn't get airplay or wasn't a huge hit. It should have been. Funny, I've seen some videos of Jim Yester talking about the song. He's the writer and lead singer kind of the song, though it's more of everybody sings along. He says that this song went number one in the Philippines, and he said he wished they would have went to the Philippines and played the song in the Philippines because it was such a huge hit in the Philippines, but they never went to the Philippines to play it. So he was kind of jokingly saying, he wish he was in the Philippines when the song was a huge hit. But besides that, yeah, it wasn't as big as I think they should have been. Um, yeah, so my whole overall analysis just it's a great if you like harmonies, you like yeah, great pop sound with lots of voices and different instruments. This is a great album I think to listen to throughout. I'm gonna give my top three. Number three is "I'm the One," which is the first track on here. Really, in fact, the first two songs are really some of my favorites on here. So they start off really well. But "I'm the One," yeah, really great. It was the one that was by Russ Giguere. He was the one that wrote. This is the only song he wrote on here. But it's a great. It's almost the verse is almost speaking, like he's almost speaking them more than singing them. But then the chorus comes in, and all the other voices come in, and they harmonize, and it's like, oh, it's so great to the ear to hear all those harmonies all of a sudden pop in, and they come out, and they pop in again on the chorus. Anyways, I really love how they did that one. Number two is a song called "Memories of You," which is the second song on here, which I said was written by Jim Yester. Um, and it was a really catchy song. I mean, I thought this for sure would be maybe it is. It wasn't a single or anything, but to me, I think if you put this on the radio, it would have been a hit song. Or if you put it out as a single, it would have been a hit because it's such a really great catchy song, "Memories of You," with great harmonies. Anyway, so and then number one, as I talked before, "No Fair at All." One of the great song. I mean, such a great revelation to me when I heard the song. It's a song that I listen to constantly on Spotify. I put it on my Spotify list and I listen to it all the time because it's just so beautiful to listen to. So yeah, I highly recommend if you listen to this album and check out those three songs for sure. If not anything, get on Spotify and check out "I'm the One," "Memories of You," and "No Fair at All." Anyways, that would be my recommendation. Anyway, so that's it for this album review. I had "Chirping Crickets" by Buddy Holly and Crickets at number 96, and then "Renaissance" by The Association. It was number 95 on my list, and so check them out. And I'd love to hear any comments if you have a fan of these albums or these groups, and I'll read them and comment back. And I appreciate everything, and take care.